Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to another episode of the Path of Wellness podcast. I'm your host, Nicole, and this is going to be another full-length episode, which I'm really excited about. I just recorded a bunch of Wellness Wednesday episodes, which are shorter, so it's kind of fun to go into depth on a topic. What I wanted to talk about today was my journey through anxiety. And this is really the story of how I wound up becoming an acupuncturist. In my last full-length episode, I talked about my journey through or to becoming a shaman. And by that point, I was already licensed as an acupuncturist. So my shamanic journey didn't start until after acupuncture. This is like the very beginning of my story, when my healing journey really began. So I'm excited to share it with you all. And it all began in my early 20s when I fondly look back on that time as the time where I say fondly, I'm giving myself grace. I was walking around in a fog of unenlightenment. That's how I describe it. At that point in time, gosh, I was like 21, 22. I was so out of touch with everything. I was out of touch with myself, with my feelings, I didn't have any sort of spiritual practice. I was really just kind of wandering around lost, as so many young 20-somethings do. And this is where I was at, just wandering around lost, had no idea what I wanted to do. I was in college studying. I changed my major like 5 times because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I did know that I really liked taking pictures and I was really good at it. So I had taken a lot of photography classes. And then trying to figure out what to do with that in the early aughts. I feel like it would have been more straightforward now because a lot of people do work as photographers, but back then I was shooting on film, which is cool. I have like a unique skill set. I know how to shoot on film. I know how to develop film manually. I know how to print prints manually in a dark room, which I miss doing, by the way. But I couldn't really figure out how to make a career out of that. Like I said, it's even then, like in the early aughts, it was already phasing out, like doing manual old school photography. And yeah, it wasn't a viable career option. So I just, like took pictures. I was good at it. I was wandering around lost. I wound up at Cal State Long Beach. I'm from Southern California, so I did community college. I loved community college, but I was doing all the general ed stuff. So I didn't have like a specific area of focus. I had like subjects that I really enjoyed. But again, like I don't really know what I want to do. So I wind up finishing at Long Beach City, the community college, transferring to Cal State Long Beach. And I feel like that's where it all went downhill. Like I got to this point where I was having really bad panic attacks, but I'm in my early 20s. I didn't know, I look back at that point in time and I think I can't even recognize myself. I was so different back then than I am now. Like now I can't even imagine not understanding what I was going through or understanding what my body was trying to tell me. But that's where I was at that point in time. I lived my life in a fog of not understanding myself in the slightest. I was so out of touch with everything. So I started having these panic attacks once I get to Long Beach State. But because I didn't know anything about health, I didn't know what a panic attack was. I didn't know that that's what I was experiencing. I thought, honestly, that I was dying. It sounds dramatic, but if you've ever had a panic attack, especially your first panic attack, where you didn't understand what was happening to you, it really does feel like you're dying. It's a horrible sensation. So this had been happening to me for a couple of months at this point. And it got bad enough to where I would wake up in the middle of the night gasping for air. Like I couldn't breathe is what it felt like. So it got so bad. I would wake up gasping for air. I didn't have any insurance at the time either. If I had, I probably would have sought help sooner, but because I didn't, I just put it off thinking like, oh, I don't know what this is, but I'm just going to kind of plow my way through it because that's what I've done my whole life. And then I wound up like waking up thinking I was suffocating. And at that point, I decided that, or actually, it was my husband. Well, we were dating at the time. It was my husband, now then boyfriend, convinced me that I needed to go to the hospital because he was freaked out too. Like he would see me gasping for air and he's like, I don't know what's wrong with you, but this can't be good. Like, I don't care if you don't have insurance. I'm taking you to the hospital. So I agreed. Said, yeah, you're probably right. I think I do need to go to the hospital. Like, no insurance, whatever. I have to go. So I go. I'm 23 at this point, I think. Was I 23? Yeah, I was 23. It was February. It was a February. And I go. I didn't know what to tell them in like when I first got to the hospital, other than I was struggling to breathe and my chest was hurting. So they just put me down as like potential cardiac arrest patient, and they ran all of the tests on me to make sure that I wasn't having a heart attack. And I was pretty dang unaware and not enlightened at that point in time, but me even then knew that I wasn't having a heart attack. I was like, I'm 23, I'm in great health other than whatever this problem is. I highly doubt I'm having a heart attack, but they just need to cover their butts. So they did all the tests. I was at the hospital for like 12 hours. They ran so many tests on me, and I didn't have any insurance, mind you. This was all not a good situation. And the whole time that I was there, I felt like I was on a conveyor belt, just going from one test to the next. I'd meet with the next specialist who would do the next test. Like I got the EKG, I got the chest x-ray, got the blood work. I feel like they did other stuff too. Was there a CAT scan in there? I don't even remember. They did so many different tests. And it was the middle of the night when I was there for like 12 hours. So I was like half asleep. I'm freaked out. Don't even remember what all they did on me. I just remember feeling like I was on a conveyor belt of tests and specialists and blood work and all of that. And at the end of it all, I was like laying in one of the hospital beds. Like they had me in a hospital gown. And a doctor finally came to talk to me. And he's looking at all of my charts and all of my tests and everything. And he's like, everything's good. You're in perfect health. And I'm like, if I'm in perfect health, why do I feel like I'm dying? And it was like in passing. He just said, oh, you just have anxiety. And I was like, anxiety? Really? I was like, anxiety can make you feel this bad? He's like, yeah, this is how it can show up sometimes. And I'm like, I just spent 12 hours and who knows how much money out of pocket here for you to tell me that I have anxiety. My mind was blown. And then he wrote me a prescription for Xanax. And just, that was it. Sent me home. And so I go home and I remember, one, I was partly relieved, like once I knew that there was nothing actually wrong with me. But also I was pissed off. One, I felt like at this point in time, I felt like I was a victim of the system, like I got put through this conveyor belt of tests and blood work and then eventually drugs just to be told there's nothing wrong with you. You're perfectly fine. You feel like death, but it's fine. You feel fine. Just take Xanax, or you are fine. Take Xanax and that'll solve all of your problems. I felt so not seen, and like my whole experience was minimized. Like it felt degrading to me. And I was also in my early 20s, and I was very angsty in my early 20s, like very, very angsty. So this whole experience just played into that whole headspace that I was already living in, where, you know, hospitals are awful, doctors are bad, all they want to do is give you drugs and put you through tests. I was very jaded, to say the least. And I took that prescription for Xanax and I threw it in the garbage. Like, I saw this prescription, and one, it just made me mad when I would look at it because it reminded me of the whole experience. But also, I knew in my heart, even at that time when I was totally not aware of anything, I knew in my heart that that wasn't the right solution for me. Once I had a quote diagnosis, anxiety, I knew that taking a medication wasn't the solution for me. Now, fast forward to all these years later, I specialize in treating anxiety in my patients. I meet a lot of people who do take anti-anxiety medications, and for them, it works. It's a good solution for them, but they're also seeing me, and they're doing other things. It's not just taking the anxiety medications. So I am not anti anxiety medications. Like, I'm not against people taking anxiety medications if they need it, if it's a good solution for them, and if they're doing other things to improve their lives. I'm not saying that at all. I just knew for me personally, that wasn't what I wanted to do. It didn't feel right. Once I realized that it was anxiety that I had, which I'd never had before in my life, at least not that I was aware of. In hindsight, I probably did. I just didn't know because I was totally unaware of my body and myself. Seriously, don't know how I survived as long as I did, feeling or just being that way. But once I knew that that's what it was, I remember thinking, if I'm this stressed out to where I feel like I'm going to die, maybe I need to be addressing the stress. Maybe I need to be figuring out what's causing me this stress. And I really don't want to take Xanax. So I'm going to do whatever I can to not have to take Xanax. I'm going to learn how to manage this some other way. And that was the beginning of my healing journey. I knew I didn't want to take Xanax. I wanted something different. I wanted something more natural, more holistic. And that's how it all began. It started with yoga, actually. At the time, I was working at a spa and a yoga lounge. It was spa and yoga lounge. It's kind of funny. But as part of one of my perks of working there is that I got free yoga classes. And I'd never done yoga before. But after I realized I had anxiety, I thought, people do yoga to calm down, right? Like, that's a thing. So I just started going to yoga classes. I fell in love with it. I'm like, I love yoga. This is so cool. And also, the very first class that I went to was like a hardcore vinyasa flow class. I'd never done yoga in my life. Very first yoga I did was like advanced yoga. I was so sore for days after this. I should have started with something different. I wish I had known, but that's okay. It is what it is. That was a long time ago, and I survived, so it's fine. But through doing yoga, I started to get more in touch with my body. I also started doing Kundalini yoga, which was something they offered as well at the spa that I was working at. I had no idea what Kundalini yoga was. I didn't know any of this. I really just went into all of this stuff blind. I had no plan other than, I'm stressed out. I need to calm down. I've got free yoga. I'm going to go do yoga. Let's try that. So yeah, the flow yoga classes were great. I really, really liked them. Then I started doing Kundalini yoga. Kundalini yoga is its own bag of stuff. If you've never done it before, it's much more about breath work and moving your body in really weird ways. It feels weird when you're doing it, and you do it in conjunction with the breath work. And it helps to activate your Kundalini, which is like this, I think they call it like a snake energy. Like, this is all yogic, Ayurvedic principles, which is, again, not my area of expertise. It's just something that I've dabbled in a little bit. So I'm sorry if I'm like, for anybody who knows this better than I do, I'm sorry if I'm not explaining it perfectly. But I think the gist of it is that the Kundalini is like this snake like energy that starts at the base of your spine and it, goes all the way up to your head. Or at least that's what it does when you activate it. And that's the purpose of Kundalini yoga, is that you use this breath work and these interesting body movements to like move this Kundalini energy up. So I start doing Kundalini yoga. First time I did it, I felt great. Actually, because of all of the oxygen, you kind of float. I lived right across the street from the spa that I worked at the time, so I didn't have to drive, luckily. I just like walked home. But I felt like I was floating on a cloud. I'm like, whoa, this is great. And then the next day I felt great. And then day 2, like the second day after Kundalini yoga, I felt like an insane, crazy, emotional person. And it took me a while of doing Kundalini yoga to figure out what was happening, because it was always on the second day. I'd do Kundalini yoga, I'd feel good for the day of, the second, or like the day after, and then I guess it's technically the third day, I would feel insane. Just like I would be bawling, I would be yelling, like all of these crazy emotions. I had no idea what was happening to me. The teacher that taught the class, I would ask her about it, like, do you understand what this is? And she wasn't able to explain it to me, which in hindsight, probably not the best teacher, but this was my healing journey. I needed to figure out everything the hard way, apparently. I think it's why I'm so good at what I do now, because I learned from the school of hard knocks. But I would experience that every time I did Kundalini yoga. And after so long of going through that, I began to realize I had spent my whole life, like 23 years. At this point, I think I might have turned 24. First, like, quarter of my life, not feeling anything. Like, I buried emotions. I didn't express things. My best friend at the time would get mad at me because I didn't tell her about things, and she felt like I wasn't her friend. And I, at the time, did not understand what she was talking about. I was like, "You're my best friend. What do you mean I'm not talking to you about things?" Because I didn't express myself. And that's just how I was at that point in time. Like, that's how cut off I was. Looking back, I'm now fully aware and I understand what she meant. And I feel really guilty about it too, because even though I shouldn't, because it is what it is. I can't go back and fix it, but I get it now. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what she was talking about. Like, I really was completely cut off. She thought it was just because I didn't trust her. That wasn't the case at all. I didn't even have these feelings with myself. So how could I possibly share them with another person? What Kundalini yoga did was it took all of these trapped feelings and emotions that I never experienced, and it brought them up. It didn't just bring them up, it like shot them out, like intensely, aggressively. And then I was forced to feel like 24 years worth of stuff, like, oh, those girls in high school hurt my feelings. I never really dealt with that. Okay, I got to feel that. Or, like, this thing happened at home 10 years ago. Apparently, it's time for me to finally feel that. Like, it's like my whole system had been on lockdown my whole life, which is why I didn't even understand that I was anxious, because I was so out of touch with everything. It's also why I was as anxious as I was. You can't walk around with that many trapped feelings in your body and not expect something bad to happen. But I didn't know that's what I was doing. So in a way, Kundalini yoga was kind of life-saving. It was majorly intense and unpleasant, but I feel like in a way it saved my life. Like, it got me to realize what I had been living like and how it had impacted me and how not healthy it is to live like that. I did eventually stop doing Kundalini yoga because I couldn't handle the intensity at that point in time. And I also didn't feel very confident in the teacher, who couldn't explain this to me. Like everything that I'm telling you guys now, this is all just stuff that I've concluded on my own. I kind of feel like I would be able to teach Kundalini yoga better than the trained teacher. That particular one anyways. I'm sure there's great Kundalini yoga teachers out there. I just didn't have one. But again, School of Hard Knocks for the win. But through this yoga process, Kundalini yoga aside, just the regular like hatha and vinyasa flow yogas, I loved them so much and they were so helpful for me that I began to look into how to become a yoga teacher. I thought maybe this is what I want to do for my career, since I had been, hopping majors, wandering around lost. And then I had my crazy panic attacks and trip to the ER. And I realized I was so stressed out, and I realized that my school had a lot to do with it, because I really didn't even like what I was studying. I also found out later that Cal State Long Beach is built, it's a big campus too. It's like bigger than Disneyland, but it's built on a Native American burial ground. I'm sure there is definitely part of me that could pick up on that. Like, this school shouldn't be here. We're on sacred grounds. Why is there a school here? So anyways, I dropped out and I just worked at this spa and was like focusing on my health at that point in time. I discovered yoga, fell in love with it, and thought I should be a yoga teacher. So I'm researching how to be a yoga teacher. And through this research, I somehow stumbled upon acupuncture school. It was like a website I found. This is like in 2008. So I don't even remember what the website was. It probably doesn't even exist anymore, but it was like a hub for natural type schools. And, it had like, here's where you can get yoga trainings and certifications. And then it also, like, I saw acupuncture school in there, and that just piqued my interest. It was like, I saw it on the screen. I zeroed in on it and I'm like, oh, what's that? I'm like, acupuncture. I knew what it was. Like, I'd heard of it. I had a couple of aunts who swore by it, but I'd never done it myself. And I didn't even consider that it was something that you could learn, even though, like, logically I should have known that, but it never put it together that you could go learn to be an acupuncturist. And I'd never even done it before. The whole thing was just funny. I think I was just meant to be an acupuncturist. So I saw this ad and I discovered that there's schools that you can go to. And I lived in Southern California, where there's multiple schools that you can go to. So I just thought, well, I'll just send away for a brochure. Like, what do I got to lose? So I start sending away for brochures. I get a couple back. One of them sent me like coupons to come get a free treatment in their student clinic as part of the brochure. And so I took them up on the offer. I had 2 coupons. I actually took my best friend, the one who was mad at me for not talking to her about my feelings. I took her with me, and we both got treatments. And my mind was blown after getting acupuncture, like totally blown. The girl that I saw, she was an intern, because you have to do an internship in acupuncture school as part of your training. So she was an intern, but she was amazing. The questionnaire was so thorough. She was with me for like 2 hours. She asked me so many detailed questions about every aspect of my life. I felt so seen, I felt so heard, and I felt so validated. And the whole time that I was there, I'm pretty sure I was crying just out of relief, because it's relieving for somebody to feel like somebody sees you. But it felt like the experience I wish I had had in the hospital, when I was scared and didn't understand what was happening to me. And nobody sat down and talked to me until the very end. The whole time I was just being shuffled around from room to room and waiting. And yeah. And then all I got out of it was, you have anxiety. Here's a prescription. But I go see this acupuncturist or acupuncture intern, and she looked at my whole life. She asked me all the questions. She helped me uncover what was really going on with my anxiety. And she helped me she explained to me what was going on in my body with the organs that were causing the anxiety and how you can treat it. And she also helped me address some other just random issues that I had been having. They weren't like serious, they were just more annoying than anything. But she was like, oh yeah, we can treat that too. Oh yeah, we can treat that. And I'm like, really? You can do that all like today? She's like, yeah. So I get the treatment, and I I felt so good after that treatment. It felt like Kundalini yoga when you just feel kind of floaty, except it didn't have any of the crazy after effects. And it also like helped my shoulder to feel better because my shoulder had been bothering me, and it like helped a couple of other random health things that I had going on. And she gave me homework. Like she gave me suggestions on foods that I could eat that would help benefit me. She gave me Chinese herbs to help me manage the anxiety. It was amazing. It was like this whole treatment plan. And I knew then that I had to go to acupuncture school. It was like my mind was so blown, and I just felt like I'm home. I don't know where I've been this whole time, but I finally just came home. This is where I need to be. But I had spent the last however many years of my college career changing majors and bouncing around from thing to thing. And I was really determined to not have acupuncture be just the next thing that I was chasing. And I was also really determined to heal myself and to overcome the anxiety. And I wanted to make sure that acupuncture school was something that I really, really, really wanted to do, and not just jump into it and potentially cause myself more anxiety. So I gave myself a year. I decided, like, I really want to do this, but I'm going to take 1 year to sleep on it. In that time, like the year that I'm not going to school, I'm going to keep doing yoga. I'm going to keep like going about my healing journey, like overcoming the anxiety. And at the end of the year, if I still feel like I want to go to acupuncture school, then I will let myself sign up. That's exactly what I did. I got to the end of the year. I still felt very strongly called to go to acupuncture school. So I enrolled, and the rest is history. It took me 5 years to get through acupuncture school, but I did it. And in the meantime, I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about anxiety and how to really manage it. I will probably do more episodes about anxiety because this is a really big topic, but yoga and acupuncture were only two tools that I use to manage my anxiety. I've learned way more throughout the years as to how to manage anxiety. And at this point in my life, I'm 39 now. So this was whatever, however many years ago that was, 17, 15. Math, you guys, math is not my forte. All of the years since then, I've gotten to the point where anxiety is pretty much a thing of the past. If I get anxiety now, it is purely situational, as in there is a cause. There's something obvious that's making me feel anxious. Sometimes not obvious things will make me feel anxious, but I am in tune with myself enough to where I can figure it out. If it seems more like I don't understand where this is coming from. Like I know how to meditate. Like I can do shamanic work now to get to the bottom of anxiety. Like I just have so many more tools at my disposal now. And that's really the beginning of my get over my anxiety journey and learn how to manage it without needing to take medications. It started with a huge wake up call, and then it led to yoga, which led to acupuncture, and then a whole bunch of healing stuff since then. And shamanic work came in, and it's been a whole process, but I'm at the point now where I'm really freaking good at it. And that is why I specialize in treating it in my office. So that's all I got for you guys today. thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you found it helpful, feel free to leave a review. I would love to hear from you. And I will catch you guys in the next episode.